Hello, everybody. My name is Mark Fortin. I'm with Michigan Matters. And today we have a very timely broadcast today. As you know, more and more in the news all across America, all of a sudden, out of the blue, everybody in the world wants a data center. And there's all kinds of issues being brought up about those and so on. And in Macomb County, in Washington Township, it started in mid-December, where the township started talking about a potential data center there. And our special guest today is Corinne Graper. She's with us today, and she's a chair of the Washington Township Data Center Committee. And hello, Corinne. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
And
Thank you.
I don't know a great deal about this except my own personal point of view and the little information that I have. The idea of using so much water, electricity, blah, 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 and no one wants them. And no one seems to talk about the benefits or whatever. So what I'd like to know is, when did this start in Washington Township, and how quickly did the people respond to this? How serious are they? What were you looking for when you started? All this kind of thing. So if you can fill us in on that, please do.
Yeah, well, and Mark, I've got to thank you so much for having me. And I've got to just add that our official title is the Stop the Washington Township Data Center.
I'm
So
sorry.
the stop's an important part there. But as you said, on December 11th of 2025, there was a planning commission meeting, and this got brought forward to our town in Washington Township. And most of our town, we had less than 2 days notice. I found out about 2 days before when a friend said, "Hey, have you heard about a technical campus that's coming in?" People are saying it's actually a data center. And that sent off alarm bells to me because I knew a bit about the environmental impacts of a data center, namely the water, the energy, the noise. And I was concerned about this coming into our town. So myself and probably 300 other residents packed that planning commission meeting. I don't think they were expecting that many people. They had to open up more rooms. Nobody knew at the time what this was. It swooped in so fast, and it was called a technical campus, not a data center. So there was a lot of confusion, and people showed up to really get clarity of what is happening. And word spread quickly that what everyone thought it actually was a data center. And I think myself and the other residents were highly concerned that such a hyperscale data center would be coming into our community in an area where there are homes and businesses, and it's within a mile and a half of several schools as well.
So that's something I did not know, that the initial meetings, it was advertised as a technical campus.
Yeah.
You know, these are the kind of things, Corinne, that automatically lead me to believe in things being nefarious. I mean, right away they mislabel, they do all these different things. There's no forthcoming data. The people get upset, and rightfully so. It's your property, you live there, you're raising families there. And yet everything is like semi-secret. It's disingenuous from the beginning. If it was a real thing, it would not be approached this way, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not, a data center expert, but I did start my career working in corporate PR. So I do understand how large corporations can position things to try to win people over. And it is interesting that in our town, they called it a technical campus. And when you look at the Van Buren Township Data Center, they call it Project Cannoli. And the one in Saline, they call it Project Stargate. And then they rebranded it recently to The Barn. And so I think there absolutely is something to giving it these kind of code words and names.
Yes.
Ours also came in on December 11th. We came into that planning commission meeting, a time when lots of people are busy with holidays and running around and not paying attention. And in our town, if our planning commission hadn't tabled it, so the way this works is when these applications come in, they go to a planning commission, which is a group of residents who are on the planning commission. And that planning commission makes a recommendation. They look at the application, they look to see, does it fit with the zoning or not? And then they make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees whether to approve or deny it. Had our planning commission approved it, it would have gone on to our Board of Trustees a week later. So this could have been passed through in 1 week in our town before people really even knew what it was and what was coming in. And I believe that's what happened in Lyon Township and in Farmington Hills, that people were saying, we didn't even know this was coming to our town. And in 1 week, it passed through both of those, the Planning Commission and Board of Trustees, and got approved before people could even participate in the public process, right, and voice their concerns. And so I'm thankful at least that our planning commission said, we're going to table this. We need more information. And that really halted the process for us and gave us some time.
Okay, so now that first meeting you attended with very little notice, how many people showed up?
There were probably about 300 people. And it
Really?
it was beautiful to see. I have not seen something like that before. And we have a tight-knit community here in Washington Township, but there were people from all ends of the political spectrum there. There was even one person who shouted, "I'm a communist and I'm against this." And so everybody was represented at our township. Nobody wanted a data center. And since then, our committee has really formed. Just nobody on our committee knew each other. We're a committee of 10 people who are actively working to hold our township accountable, to educate ourselves and residents, and to make sure that the proper procedures and processes are followed and that the will of the people is represented. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Perfect. I love that kind of thing. And that's a very important phrase that you just said about the will of the people is represented. I'm 79. I've been watching Michigan circle the drain for 40 years. And every year it seems as though we have less and less representative government and more top-down control over every aspect of our life. And that's something that really irritates me. And this is kind of an example in a way, because, it's branded as a technical campus. And, it could all have been done in 2 weeks, right? And everybody could have woke up 2 weeks later during a busy time of the year, and all of a sudden seeing construction and wondering what's going on.
Yep.
This is not representative government, and somehow we have to work to reestablish representative government.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that they postponed it. Now, don't bring everybody up to date, including myself. Just the other day, I understand that the people wanting the data center backed up, that they pulled it right now.
Yeah.
So, can you say anything about that? I heard it's temporary, though.
Yeah, it is. So there was yesterday, actually, we found out that the developer in our town in Washington Township is called Prologis. They're a real estate developer. They are building this data center for Palantir, which is an American defense contractor conducting surveillance. And so our town also has considerations and concerns about security, right? If these are these hyperscale data centers, this is going to be on 312 acres of land. They're processing enormous amounts of intel and data. And we feel like that makes our town a target, right? And we saw with the Iran war, they bombed 2 Amazon data centers as a way to get back at America. And so it's I think, a reasonable concern from a security standpoint that having this right across the street from where my daughter does gymnastics, from people's homes, not too far from schools, is highly concerning. So the data center developer has withdrawn their application, and the lawyer, developer's lawyer, it said something like, we will likely wait to proceed until your township has ordinances in place. So it's not going away, they're just paused, and it's going to come back until our township has ordinances regulating data centers and high energy intensive developments.
Yes. I remember this environmentalism drives me crazy a lot. I'm all for the environment. I love the outdoors. We all want clean water, air, and everything. But I see so many things that seem to be counterproductive. And there used to be, when you did something in a community, I don't care if it's opening up or building a new park, a township park, you used to have to do an environmental impact statement. And do some research, and how does this affect the environment?
Yeah.
You never hear those terms anymore. All we hear is multi-million gallons of water a day and tons of electricity on an ancient grid that has not been updated, and all this kind of thing. And our electric bills going up left and right, and no environmental impact statement. What about noise? And what about the ambient temperature around?
Yes,
I mean,
the
this
heat
should be,
islands.
they should build these in Greenland if they need something cool.
Yeah. Well, they are, in some places are looking at putting them underwater in mines, in old mines. But Mark, you bring up a few great points, right? One are heat islands. So from the research I've done, it looks like the temperature raises between 3 to 4 degrees above these data centers, right? So they're full of servers that are just processing data. They're windowless buildings of just machines and machines and machines, and it creates a heat island effect. Now, here in Washington Township, we have lots of farms. We have lots of apple orchards, and one of the apple orchard owners came to one of the recent township meetings and expressed her concern that the temperature was going to be raised. Because as we all know in Michigan, temperatures fluctuate wildly. And
Yes.
with that, if that data center creates a heat island and raises the temperature in our town 3 to 4 degrees, it's going to send her apple trees into production sooner. And then we're going to get a cold front through invariably, and then it's going to freeze and damage her trees. And so there's all these trickle down consequences that nobody's talking about or thinking about because the market is pushing this through so fast. So I always say the market wants this. And when I say the market, I mean like private equity and the developers and some of these big tech companies, right? They want this. The public doesn't want this. And government is ill prepared to regulate it at all levels, federal, state, and local.
I don't even think they have a desire to regulate it. Or some would have opened their mouth by now.
Well, at a federal level, and let's make sure we get back to the effects of data centers because I'm taking us a little bit down a path, but I do want to get back to the water and noise and energy.
Okay.
But, at a federal level, last summer, President Trump passed some kind of executive orders that set aside some of the EPA regulations for data centers. Now, it's interesting and so he did it because when I watch back videos and things, you can see him saying, hey, these big tech companies came to us and said, all this environmental regulation slowing us down. And he said, what do you need? And they said, we need the red tape cut. So he cut it. And that means at a federal level, anywhere where there's a data center, some of the regulations are waived, right? So we don't have in a town, we don't have the same federal protections. Now, what I find interesting about that is if those protections really weren't needed, he would have just repealed them for all businesses, right? Okay, no businesses have to comply with these environmental regulations. And he didn't do that. And he didn't do it for a reason because they're there to protect our water and our soil and our air. And that's why these things got in place to begin with. And so he rolled them back for data centers. So small towns like ours, we don't have federal protections in place anymore to protect us from when data centers come in. So now we're relying on our state, right? And our state regulations have gaps. And now we're relying on a local level. And I can tell you in my town, our ordinances don't cover data centers. And so that's what we're trying to write ordinances to figure out how to regulate the water and the energy and the air impacts. Now, when we think about it from an energy standpoint, the hyperscalers are trying to build at minimum a 1 gigawatt facility. I recently went and looked at Ford Motor Company's sustainability report and at their energy usage. And if I'm reading that report correctly, and all of your listeners and followers can check this out for themselves. But when I look at their report, their Ford Motor Company, all of their global manufacturing operations, all of their offices, all combined together, use as much energy as one data center, one hyperscale data center on average. So think about that. Ford Motor Company, who employs hundreds of thousands of people probably, right? And makes a product that we use every day, uses equivalent amount of energy as one data center in one community, one hyperscale data center approximately. That's mind-blowing, right? Those types of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at water, depending on whether they use open or closed loop systems, they can use around 1 billion gallons of water a year. And so how is that going to affect our Great Lakes? Nobody has studied. I see nothing at a state level where they've studied how many of these things can our state handle? Can we handle 50, 100, 10,000? Who knows? Like, when are we going to have water impacts to our accessibility for water? And what happens to that water after it runs through the machines, it gets coolants added to it and gets discharged? Where does that water go?
Yep. What's in it?
And what's in it? It's a great
how
point.
you clean it and by what regulations or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's so
and
many.
Mark, when you talk about how do you clean it, here's an example of where there's gaps at. We have asked our town's water and sewer engineer, hey, does our wastewater treatment facility, can it process PFAS, which is for the forever chemicals that can sometimes be in the machines? Can our township process this? And they said, no, our township wastewater treatment facility cannot process industrial chemicals and PFAS. So who pays for that? Who's paying attention to these things, right? And it just is very frustrating at a local level that this is going so fast. And I think we need to slow down. And I'm very much for a statewide moratorium. A moratorium is not a permanent ban. It just says, let's slow down for a second and look at where we might have gaps in our state regulations and make sure we're protecting the average citizen, the average person. And let's give our local government time to develop ordinances so that they can regulate these things and people aren't vulnerable. And I think we need to also make sure that our state has the right mechanisms to monitor these things as well. So I can talk a little bit more if you're interested about kind of my experience with companies and fines and things like that. An example from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, where it went wrong.
Yep. See, I think that they don't have a whole lot of answers. They know the major issues. I mean, the people pushing the stuff. They know the issues. They know all these things, but they don't want us to know it because they want to get it built and then deal with it later if they can be dealt with later.
Yes.
And we have farms to worry about. We have the water for the farms to worry about. Like you said, apple orchards, all these different things to be concerned about. And we have a right to be concerned about them.
Yes. And we have a right for transparency, right?
Amen.
And I think people don't trust data centers and what's going in because they come in under code names, they come in fast, and people don't feel like you're for us. And then what happens is they get a data center in. I just saw a news article about Van Buren Township, right? So what data centers are saying right now is, right, they're saying the benefit they bring is tax revenue. Oh, we're going to bring so much tax revenue. Except at a state level, they've given them tax breaks for a long time. I don't remember the number of years, but I think it's like 20, 30 years, something like that. But then they say, oh, your local town's going to get so much tax revenue. But I just saw a news article yesterday that Van Buren Township, which has a data center already approved, Google is now coming back to negotiate tax incentives with the city. So they're going to get tax, they potentially could get tax breaks at a city level, and they're getting it at a state level. But that was supposed to be the big benefit to all of us, is we're going to trade our air and our water and our energy for tax, for all of this tax money that we're going to get, supposedly, right? And it just feels a bit like a bait and a switch. And it feels like they're not listening to people. They're not engaging with people.
Yep.
And it's very upsetting to be in one of these communities.
Absolutely. And anybody's community could be the next target.
Yes. So they look for, it seems like they look for large tracts of cheap land, farmland, right? Which is why they're coming to farmland. And they look for land that's not too far from electrical and water connectivity to make it less expensive for them. So,
And yet, in major cities in Michigan, like Detroit, Flint, Saginaw, they used to be manufacturing cities, manufacturing and producing real good things, not just stuff like this. There's all kinds of vacant land where factories used to be.
Yeah.
But no, they want prime farmland. No, everywhere they go. Have you heard of anybody, any promoter of this sort of thing going to a city? I haven't.
I have not either.
So,
I have.
What does that mean?
I think, and this is just my opinion, right? My thoughts are that they're going to farmland because it's easy to build on, right? If they're going to an old, Ford plant or something like that, they've got to knock that down. They probably have to remediate it. There's probably environmental issues. They don't want to deal with all that. They want to build as fast as possible. Now, I don't know. There could be other reasons, but that's where I'm assuming they're coming because it's cheaper land and it's already flat and they don't have to deal with taking down buildings.
And I think things communities should consider if they're going to prepare for this and if they have time to prepare with zoning regulations or anything like that. they should also be prepared for the destruction of them because technology is growing so quickly.
Yeah.
In 10 years, they could be obsolete. And then what
You're
do you do with it?
absolutely right. And that is one thing that we've repeatedly said to our township trustees and board is we shouldn't be putting all of our eggs in one basket, right? This is roughly they will likely, based on other data centers, they will likely build between a 1 million to 2 million square foot facility on our 312 acres, right? Or multiple facilities that add up to that, right? That is one business taking up 312 acres of land. That land is the master plan in our town has that land in the future using part of it for commercial, where we can have grocery stores and doctors' offices and things that actually people need. Then there's a part for residential, for multifamily housing, and then they have a part in the middle that is zoned for industrial research and technology, which is considered light industrial, right? Research and technology. These types of businesses would bring lots of jobs, right? One Meijer, I think, brings around 700 jobs, and a Meijer sits on probably about 10 acres and is about 200,000 square feet. We're talking about a 1 million to 2 million square foot building on 312 acres, and maybe brings 70 jobs. I'll even give them 200 to be generous. But the point of it is all of that land, and we who live in this community, we're not getting anything from that. That's not a service we can use. There aren't good paying jobs there, and there aren't many jobs there. And so it just doesn't make sense for our community. It's not in line with our community's plan, and it doesn't benefit our community.
No. Golly, we gotta keep an eye on this as it develops, not just in Washington Township, but in other areas too, to see how successful they are in either avoiding or slowing it down or whatever. We have to figure ways of talking. For one thing, we're in the middle of election year, and both the Democrats and Republicans have candidates running for governor. And if people go to these little forums and talk to people, they should be asking these candidates, what are you going to do to protect the people of Michigan from this sort of thing?
100%. That is something I would, all of your viewers would ask them to ask your representatives, go to your local leaders and ask your town, do we have ordinances? Do we have a plan? Are we putting a moratorium? This can come to anywhere, right? And yes, they are looking for larger amounts of land. So if you have large amounts of open land, you need to be concerned if you live in one of those communities. But also, looking at a state level, we need to be pressuring our state and US representatives as well. What are they doing to protect us? There is a lot of silence, and there's a lot of, I don't think either political party knows where to take a stance on this at. And we need leadership.
Fantastic. Well, Corinne, I'm so glad you're with us today, and we have to do this again as we learn more.
Yeah.
And, I'm so glad you came on today.
Thank you.
Matter, because this is really critical to Michigan. Michigan used to be the manufacturing center of the world.
Yeah.
And it's gone. And what are we replacing it with? Nothing but something like this. And without looking at all the downsides. I mean, we shouldn't be like totally against, but there's so much involved here that makes you think that the last thing on their mind is the people in the state.
Yeah.
And that's got to be taken care of.
And Mark, I agree with you. I'm not saying data centers shouldn't exist. We need data centers to run our world, right? Do we need as many hyperscale data centers that are popping up right now? I don't think so. In my opinion, why all of a sudden do we need all of these, right? A lot of this, I feel like, is speculative. These big tech companies are in a race to see who can outbuild each other, right? They're trying to win in the marketplace without anybody having a plan for how many data centers do we need? How many can we hold before it starts impacting our water? Like, nobody has a plan, and everybody's just rushing in the market. And it's the people in Washington Township and Van Buren Township and Saline Township who are getting screwed, frankly. We aren't benefiting from this. And we need our government leaders to step up and to educate themselves and get involved and to protect us. So I wholeheartedly agree with you and hope that all of your listeners will become active and write your congresswoman or congressman, write your local mayor and township supervisor. What are they doing to get on top of this?
Amen. Thanks again, my friend. I'm
Thank
so glad you were here today, and I learned a whole lot, and you're very sharp on this issue, and you did a great job, and we have to do this again, okay?
I appreciate that. I'm happy to.
Thank you so much, Corinne.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and this is important no matter who hears it. You might catch this on YouTube or Rumble, and you might live in Indiana. Well, this stuff benefits you too. We have to get a hold of our elected officials. We have to start making demands, and I'm tired of being ignored as a citizen, and all the citizens are ignored. I think a lot of this. Corinne mentioned Trump doing an executive order. I think that's kind of the core of all this in a way, because of this competition for AI with the communist red Chinese, and oh, we got to do this. Yes, we have to do that, and we can do better than them, but we can also do it smart, and that's what we have to do. And Trump does things smart. So I don't know if he realizes what he unleashed here, but we have to look at this thing logically, and we can beat the world at this, but we have to do it right. But anyway, I'd like you to go to michiganmatters.org, the website. If you can help in any way, there's a donation button there. Share it and like it if you're on YouTube, I believe it is. And let's get the information out here and get more of it out as much as we can. And we're going to have Corinne back soon, and we're going to be talking about this some more. But pray for America. We're in a lot of trouble as a country, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you very much.